Alrighty, got my penultimate match of the season coming up. Actually, potentially not. So at the moment, I'm sitting in second place with 61% so far. I'm about to play Fircoal, who is the first place contender. So this match is likely to be significant. A division is unique. In all other divisions, whoever is the first seed ends up promoting. In A division, there's nowhere left to go up. So what ends up happening is the top two players at the end of A division play a final championship match, and that gives the second place contender one more chance to catch up. So if I do well here, I'm likely to secure a spot in the championship match. If I do poorly, who knows? If I do poorly enough, I could end up back down in demotion range. So let's not go 06. Howdy. This one will not be live, as there is external commentary happening. Don't want to step on their toes, but I'll upload this one after the fact. Alrighty, game one. Let's see what we get. I see some potential synergies here. Could be relevant. So for draw, there's Imperial Envoy, Carnival, Black Cat, potentially Crossroads. Way of the Chameleon means that cards that give money could also be draw. So Merchant Ship, for example, could be played like a moat. It would not change Merchant Ship's next turn effect, unfortunately. Chameleon only affects this turn effect. So if you play Merchant Ship using Way of the Chameleon, you get +2 cards this turn, but still +2 coins next turn. Which means it's still substantially worse than Wharf, even with Chameleon. Because it's usually the next turn +2 cards that's the most valuable. Chameleon could be useful if you have overdraw here. You can convert some excess draw back into money. Chameleon on Envoy, for example, would turn it into like +3 coins, basically. Because you get 5 and still lose 2. Chameleon Carnival wouldn't do anything, because this doesn't technically draw cards. It just puts cards into your hand, but it's draw. Oh no. We've gotten illicit information from the spectators. I don't have Crypt or Exorcist in my like list. That is true. I love Exorcist. Maybe I should put it in my like list. There's so many likable cards in Dominion. Where was I? The only plus buy is Imperial Envoy. There's Hermit for gains. Trashing is Church, Develop, or Hermit. Plus buy looks at the big limitation. So the big thing that sticks out to me here is Crossroads Church is a bit of a synergy. Normally Crossroads is not a great draw card. Usually want to trash your estates early, and it's not really netting you draw until you've lined it up with multiple estates. But a pretty good synergy is just you set aside a Crossroads and 2 estates on a Church, put that in your hand at the start of turn, and then that kicks off your turn pretty well. I think that seems like a good thing to do here. Monolithically, it's pretty decent. Like 2 Crossroads, 3 Churches, and like a gold or 2 gets you consistent provinces. But you can do that as the setup to an engine here that plays with like an Imperial Envoy or 2 and buys some stuff. So maybe a deck that's like 2 Churches, 3 or 4 Crossroads, don't trash the estates, play with an Imperial Envoy, which you play for plus buy, more so than for draw. Then you can Scepter it for additional buys and money. And then maybe some walled villages. How do you get that up and running quickly? Fircoal says Hermit. I don't actually want to trash the estates here, which kind of negates one of Hermit's biggest upsides, but it is still a gainer that lets you pick up the Church and Crossroads stuff quickly. I could see Hermit. I think it's either Hermit Church or Double Church. Well, since I know I want a Church, I'm going to click that now. Yeah, so Fircoal wants Hermit Church. Probably has the same idea I have. We'll see if they trash the estates. I mean, I think the Hermit makes some sense in that there's just a bunch of cheap things I want in this deck, and Hermit lets me pick them up quickly. I'll take the Hermit. We'll see how it goes. I can't have a worse opening than they did. I do the same thing. Alright, yeah, so Fircoal has the same idea, and just went for Hermit as a gainer. Makes sense. I'll take the second Church now. How much do I care about getting a Madman here off of the Hermit? So I could just set aside 3, play the Hermit, let it turn into a Madman. And then I'm probably hitting 5 next turn. I can buy an Imperial Envoy. Alternatively, I could play the Church, set aside 1, play Hermit, gain a Crossroads, buy a Crossroads, keep the Hermit in the deck, something like that. I think the line that sets aside 3 coppers makes more sense to me. Set aside 3 coppers, play Hermit, regain Hermit, turn this Hermit into a Madman. Probably hit 5 next turn. Ideally, set aside the Madman on the second Church. Buy an Imperial Envoy, have a big turn. That just feels like the way to go. Okay, this is working out just fine. How much do I care about trashing a copper? I think the answer might be not that much. Yeah. Reflex reaction. 95% of the time you play Hermit and you can trash an estate, you trash the estate. Here, I think you have the exception, which is with Crossroads around and Church, you want to keep those estates. So the reason to trash copper is I hit 5 either way and I can still get the Imperial Envoy. The reason not to trash copper is I can set 1 aside, and then the more cards in my starting hand, the more Madman I'll draw, which I think is enough of a reason not to bother trashing. I think if I can get this stuff set up appropriately, draw is not going to be much of an object here. Alrighty, do not trash. Go Madman. Alright. So Hermit is going to gain me a Crossroads. Going to set aside 3 estates. Should probably buy a second Crossroads, I think. Just because it's really important to me to find a Crossroads in this next hand. Crossroads Scepter. Or could also be Crossroads Walled Village. Probably not Walled. The Walled Village is helpful if I find Imperial Envoy in my starting hand, but neither of my Crossroads. I could play Walled Village, Envoy, draw into the rest of the stuff. The Scepter has higher payoff if I draw. My deck is thin enough that I think I'm going to take the gamble. Well, I'm looking at precisely the hand that makes me wish I would have had. Oh my god, are you kidding? This is exactly the scenario where I would want a Walled Village. I found the Imperial Envoy. I found neither of the Crossroads. This is kind of bad because all 3 of my estates are about to show up, which means my bottom 8 cards have 2 Crossroads and no victory cards down there. I was punished for my greed. Walled Village just seemed unnecessarily conservative to me, because Crossroads is itself a village, at least the first play. I still have an Imperial Envoy and a Scepter, and Fircoal has neither yet, so maybe I'm ahead. Fircoal does still have a Madman, so it might not be so true. I think had I not dudded here, I would feel pretty ahead, but it's going to take me probably at least 2 turns to get things running again, and then that's time for Fircoal to potentially catch up. Okay, so if basically each of these makes 3 money, and accounting for the debt. So if I trash this, I have 8, which seems like a fine number. I could not trash a copper and hit 9, but I think I do want to get the coppers out of my deck, probably. There is some argument for just playing the Envoy and drawing 5 cards. I'll draw some number of coppers. It won't make me as much money, in all likelihood, as some. Actually, it definitely won't make me as much money as some just playing it as a chameleon. But given that those bottom 8 cards are not that desirable, I might just want to draw through them. That's probably true, right? What if I just like trash a copper, draw 5? I can still play the Envoy for money once. I won't make all too much. But yeah, like, I'm pretty happy I drew those 5 because apparently my Church was on the bottom. And the best way to get back in the game, I think, is just to take a turn off, set aside 3 cards on Church. And then the turn after that, I think good things will happen. Let's take a second Scepter. Alright, yeah, here we go. Probably to set aside all 3 of the copper. Well, it doesn't even matter that I set these aside. None of them's estate, none of them's Crossroads. Maybe I set aside Copper Scepter, buy another Crossroads or estate. I don't know exactly. Fircoal has 3 Crossroads already, but no Scepters. So I'm still ahead on the buys. Unfortunately, I think next turn is probably the turn where they come back, because like this turn I do close to nothing, whereas they, I expect, are going to have a full turn, and then things are going to be much more even again. Are you kidding? Well, I think I'm losing now. Apparently, not buying that walled village is going to lose me the game. I really don't think it was that likely that I drew that precise hand with the Scepter, Imperial Envoy, 3 coppers. But it did happen. With the power of hindsight, if I had bought Walled Village over Scepter, I'd be way ahead here. I'm not sure if that makes it the better play or if I'm just in the downside case of what could have been a better decision overall. Yeah, this draw is horrible because I see all of my estates and again done on my crossroads. I don't see the Imperial Envoy. Even if I found like crossroads and no estates, if I found the Envoy, that would still be okay because I could play crossroads, play Envoy. I think Fircoal is probably going to catch up here in terms of payload, but with the churches set up, they're not going to dud again. Whereas my deck is once again not functioning. I still don't have the Crossroads Church stuff set up. Nothing good. Nothing good is happening. I'm going to undo that and trash a copper and just buy a walled village. Oh, no, I have to not trash the copper to buy the walled village. Okay. Well, this will at least be something of a turn. Play Crossroads, play Envoy. If I get lucky, I draw into a Scepter. And then hopefully this church can set aside some victory cards and the Crossroads. And then once that happens, my deck will be running. But I've had like, what, 4 turns off from doing anything? Turn 6 was the Madman turn. Turn 7 was the dud. Yeah, 7, 8, 9. It's about to be turn 10. That was painful. That was a very, very painful shuffle. I still have a tad more in the way of payload, given that I've got Envoy and 2 Scepters. But their deck is just set up to be way, way more reliable in terms. That's not even really true, because there's Way of the Chameleon. So if they have like extra draw off of the extra churches and crossroads and stuff, they can convert that into payload pretty easily. All I've really got is extra buys, I guess is the correct way to phrase that. Probably just gonna set these aside. Draw again. Set aside. And from here on out, my deck should function just fine. I think that's just going to be a little bit too slow. Basically doing nothing for 4 turns is not something you want to be doing. Develop, I like that. So with Hermit around, the big constraint is like you can get as many of the cheap engine thingies as you want, the crossroads, the churches, the estates off of Hermit gains. But then to get the more expensive stuff, you got to be buying the 5s. And then the constraint on how many things you can buy is how many Imperial Envoys you can play, which is factor of the Envoys plus the Scepters. But Develop is a card you can gain for 3 off of Hermit, and then you can develop a 4-cost card up into a 5, and it gives you a good way to mid-turn gain some of those 5s. I haven't been thinking about Develop, but it definitely makes some sense to add one here. Developing the 3 is also not so bad. Get a Crossroads and a Walled Village, or a Black Cat and Walled Village. Yeah, all that makes sense to me. Yeah. Yep. I'm cruising for a bruising. The curses don't scare me too much off a Black Cat because Church is around, but they're not nothing. All right. Probably I want to gain a second church. And draw that. Set aside all of this stuff. Don't think I need to set aside the coppers. But yeah, I'm a bit behind on the money front. I'm thinking Scepter Walled Village. I could always gain a develop at some point to gain additional things. Would not mind a 6th or a 5th victory card to set aside 5 victory cards plus a Crossroads. I could do something like Scepter Crossroads Estate. A Walled Village Develop Estate? What would I be developing? I don't think I have cards that I desperately want to trash at the moment to develop. If I don't need the buys, I do have 4 buys already. Crossroads is just straight up more money than Imperial Envoy at this point, right? Because I can play it as Way of the Chameleon. So maybe it's something like Walled Village Double Crossroads. Or Walled Village Crossroads Estate. Duchy Crossroads Estate. I'm a little low on actions in that scenario. I think I like Walled Village Crossroads Estate. Final answer. Oh no, I've activated their cat. That wasn't terribly likely. I think they had just over a 1/4 chance of having it in hand. I'll get to trash the curse, so it's no big deal. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Fircoal could pile out churches, crossroads, and estates. 8 sounds like a lot. Probably they can't do it. The biggest constraint is with a develop, it's really easy to pile out stuff that costs 2 apart. So maybe something like Crossroads Walled Village Estate is actually easier. They only have the 1 develop play. They have 2 envoys, that's 3 buys. Potentially 2 more gains, that's 5 gains. 6 gains, 7 gains with a Hermit. That's pretty close, but I think it's 1 off. They're lower in the piles. Oh, maybe that can do it. You trash a church. Oh, no, that doesn't quite work. Never mind. I thought they were trashing a walled village and gaining like a develop and a scepter or something. Then you could scepter, develop, or hermit for additional gains. I'm guessing they're not going to quite have the pile out here. I could be wrong. What's likely to happen is the piles are lowered a bit, and they score some points, and they have enough of a point that I can't pile out, and then they'll have this pile out next turn. That's, I think, how I'm most likely to lose. Well, maybe they just do have the pile out outright, and they did find an ending. Do you have a 3rd gain? Yeah, they got it. Okay, that is the game. $28 money, just barely enough. Yeah, well, it's pretty clear which turn cost me the game. The turn where I bought the scepter over the Walled Village, that coupled with the next shuffle just destroyed my deck. Hard to say that it was a mistake, though. I mean, it might have been, but the Walled Village would have been a very conservative buy that only really helped me in specific. Oops, I'm player 1. They were player 1 last time. It would have only helped me in the specific 1 draw that I ended up having.